Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today I want to talk about Dungeons & Dragons, and I want to talk about G-Facet. And specifically, I want to talk about how, in my humble opinion, G-Facet is about to put the OSR out of business. Let's jump into this. Okay, so the world is divided into D&D Now and D&D Then. So D&D Now is defined as people who are excited about Dungeons & Dragons, love Dungeons & Dragons, and play Dungeons & Dragons as it exists the shelf on the shelf, right? So you go into an FLGS, what's there, right? And what's there is right now there's Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. In the fall, there's going to be Dungeons & Dragons Infinite edition, and that's the new 2024 core rule books. Those books are going to end. All editions for Dungeons & Dragons will officially be in one D&D, and Dungeons & Dragons will only have facets at that point, right? So I want to talk about G-Facet. G-Facet is something really unique. It's going to happen this year. It's going to happen in June 18th. They're going to publish The Making of Original Dungeons & Dragons, 1970 to 1977. That book will fully reprint, page for page, the original first print of Dungeons & Dragons with the Tolkien material, with hobbits, ents, and balrogs, which was illegal when they did it in 1974, as I understand it, in my humble opinion. And actually, they kind of said it in, like, literally on the official channel. They're like, we didn't have right to do this. But it is legal now, right? Like, they're not breaking the law by reprinting it, because Hasbro is they're in monthly contact with the Tolkien estate. They send $1 million checks every month for Magic the Gathering, Lord of the Rings. There's a lot of communication between the Tolkien estate and Dungeons & Dragons at this point, in my humble opinion, right? Okay. So, okay, let's talk about G-Facet, all right? So when they print the original first print, 100-page, 1974 Dungeons & Dragons material in Making of Original Dungeons & Dragons, 1970 to 1977, that will be a fully playable original print that literally sat in Gary Gygax's living room, and literally has the Tolkien material in it, but now with the Tolkien's estate's blessing, as I understand it, in my humble opinion. Okay, that's astounding, right? And that is OG. That is original gangster Dungeons & Dragons, and you cannot get more gangster, because it was illegal when it was originally printed. It was a crime to print it, right? Like, that is as gangster as it gets, right? And now it's going to be completely reprinted, right? So in one single year, Dungeons & Dragons ends editions for every tabletop role-playing game out there who actually wants to be taken seriously. It will become, the moment the Infinite Edition arrives in September of 2024, any tabletop role-playing game that prints a new edition is like, we just want to shank we just want to do a virtual shank on all our, on our entire community. You guys can pay us for the same crap we gave you before, right? Dungeons & Dragons is like, editions are done. Editions are done. There's just one D&D. It's just facets of the same stone, right? And they're promised, and they're like, there's never going to be another, like, this is the last edition. They're like, and actually, it's not even an edition, right? Like, editions are finished. There's just one Dungeons & Dragons, right? And that is going to be the model for every tabletop role-playing game. So any tabletop role-playing game that's like, hey, we know you love second edition. We know you bought 50 books. You can throw them in a lake. They're all worthless. Here's third edition. Editions will simply be a new way to say, we don't care about our community. This is a cash grab, right? That will be a badge. It will be a cash grab badge on every tabletop role-playing game that prints a new edition after September 2024 is just saying, hey, we don't take our community seriously. We're not really a real tabletop role-playing game. We don't really care about the community. This is just a cash grab. And we're amateurs. Right? This is amateur hour, right? It's just junk for people who have no taste, right? Like, in addition to that, in addition to permanently ending editions for Dungeons & Dragons, in the same year, Dungeons and Dragons now, Hasbro Dungeons and Dragons will officially, in my humble opinion, shut down the entire OSR. The entire old school rule industry will immediately, overnight, become irrelevant, right? Because a bog standard, so, basically, just think about this, right? Some 60-year-old grognard comes in and goes, oh, I see you have a few modules in the back room, on the back shelves for, keep on the Borderlands. I play Dungeons and Dragons, Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. And then literally a 1-year game master who started 2 years ago watching because they watched Stranger Things and go, oh, you play Advanced Dungeons and Dragons? Oh, well, I have D&D Infinite and I play the old school, the real old school, right? Original print, first print, Dungeons and Dragons, with the Hobbit, with the Tolkien, with the Balrog. So you playing some 90s junk? Oh, I guess you don't take the game seriously. You're just playing a copy of you're just playing a later version of what us old school rules people really run, right? And I came in 2 years ago when I finished Stranger Things, and already I'm ahead of you, old man. And they'll be right. They'll be right. Like, nothing is more gangster than first print Gary Gygax 100-page Dungeons and Dragons with the Tolkien estate, Hobbit, and Balrog. A 2-year veteran, a two-year dungeon master who just picked up D&D Infinite and picked up making of original Dungeons and Dragons in 1970 and 1977 because they play D&D now and aren't blowing dust off their books, is more gangster and is cooler and is more old school than some 60-year-old grognard playing second edition, who is now irrelevant, uncool, and not even playing OG D&D. The way a 2-year dungeon master who came in through Stranger Things can do with just what came out this year. The moment the making of original Dungeons and Dragons, 1970 to 1977, drops, the entire OSR shuts down, okay? Industry shuts down, and they become the CSR, the copy school rules. They will just be playing a copy of the original gangster first print Dungeons and Dragons. You cannot get cooler than that, right? With the Tolkien estate, Hobbit, and Balrog material in it, right? And every OSR will then be subservient, like they will be subordinate, that's a better word, subordinate. They'll be playing not as cool, not as gritty Dungeons and Dragons. A 2-year Stranger Things DM will pass every 60, 70-year-old grognard on the planet on day one when making of original Dungeons and Dragons 1970 to 1977 drops. In 1 year, Hasbro is about to end editions in every tabletop role-playing game forever, right? The only editions that'll be left will be hack companies who are like, F the community, right? And in the same year, Dungeons & Dragons will become the most original gangster OSR publishers on the planet, and no one can beat them because no one has anything that is that original, that is that old school. Everything else will be fresher school, copy school. Every single word you just heard is my humble opinion. I'm really curious to hear your humble opinion. When you get in the comments and send your traffic, please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.